بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. So tonight, inshallah ta'ala, as we continue with the book of Bidayatul Mujtahid, we reach the third branched off topic with regards to what is focusing on water. And this third topic is اختلافهم على الماء المستعمل, the differing of the scholars, may Allah have mercy on them all, as regards to the water that has already been used. قال ابن رشد رحمة الله عليه الماء المستعمل في الطهارة اختلفوا فيه على ثلاثة أقوال. He says the water that has already been used for the purpose of purification, for wudu for example, and being able to reuse that water to perform wudu with it or to perform ghusl with it, the scholars have basically three credible positions that they hold, which are differing with one another. الأول فقال قوم لم يجيزوا لم يجيزوا الطهارة به على كل حال. So he tells us that the first position of the scholars is that they do not allow for the permissibility at all to use that water for purification. So that first position says, no, you cannot use this to purify yourself, whether it be for wudu or for ghusl, period. He says, وَهَذَا مَذْهَبُ الشَّافِعِيِّ وَأَبِي حَنِيفَةَ وَأَحْمَدَ. And so this is the position of Imams al-Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa and Ahmad, all three of them saying that no, it is not permissible. The second, وَقَوْمٌ كَرِهُوهُ وَلَمْ يُجِيزُوا التَّيَمُّمَ مَعَ وُجُودِهِ. The second position, they allow it, but they dislike it. And they'll go one step further and say that if you have this water, you cannot perform tayammum. And we know that tayammum is one of the forms of purification, and we'll get to that inshallah, when you have something of a legitimate excuse not to use water or that there's an absence of water. So the second position says that it's permissible, but we really don't like it. We don't prefer that you do this. But if you had to now use this water or make tayammum, you can't make tayammum. You have to use this water that's already been used for wudu. So just to maybe step back a second, let me just mention whose position that is, and then we'll. So this is the position of Imam, who madhabu Malik wa ashabu. This is the Maliki position. In case some of us are thinking, how do you even use water and used water, and how does this happen? Because most of us, we make water from a sink, and the water goes down the drain, and it's like we can't even begin to imagine how is it possible that you're going to have used water to make wudu with or to bathe with. So if we really think about how society was before this issue of plumbing in the way that we see it, they had containers of one sort or the other, something of a vessel, of a big pot, or some type of a bucket, or something to that extent. And they would go to it, and they would use the water from it, and as they're making their wudu, the water would go back into that barrel, into that big jug or that container, whatever it was. And so you have the water that you're making of wudu, you're rinsing your mouth, your nose, you're washing your face, your arms, you're wiping your head and ears and so on. It's going right back into that container, and it's mixing in with it. And so this is the question. That water now that has in it those qualities of water that's already been used, is it permissible or not? So this is where we're coming at it from. So the third position. وَقَوْمٌ لَمْ يَرَوْا بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ الْمَاءِ الْمُطْلَقِ فَرْقًا. The third position of the scholars is that they don't see any difference between that water and pure water as a whole. Right? And if we think about that for a second, what has happened? There hasn't been anything of a najasa, of an impurity in that sense of legitimate filth of urine or feces that has been mixed with it. What you have is the human being coming into contact with it. The rinsing of the mouth, the rinsing of the nose, the washing of the face. So they're saying it's water. There's no problem with it. In the same way that if you think about sometimes water coming into contact, animals with it, things of that sort, it's still water, it's clean, there's nothing of a problem. They're looking at it as being there's nothing that separates that water that's been used for the purpose of purification like wudu from pure water that nobody's even touched. And this is the position of Abu Thawr, Dawood, Ashabuhu, wa Ahmed. So the position of Abu Thawr and Dawood al-Zahiri and his folks, and Imam Ahmed rahimahumullah ta'ala jami'an, this is the second position that he has. Now it's common in some of these madhahib, and perhaps maybe a bit more common in the Hanbali madhab, to find that Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi, that he will have more than one position. That he will have more than one position. And this is where the scholars from within the madhab will do their best to make sense of why he has different statements all on the same matter. Why in this case, I don't know. I haven't been able to review it, to be honest, to see. The last thing that's mentioned here, he says, وَالشَّذَّ أَبُو يُوسُفَ فَقَالَ إِنَّهُ نَجِسٌ. He tells us that there's another position here, but he calls it shadh, meaning that this is a position that you don't even pay attention to. Right? الشذوذ في يعني من أقوال العلماء, for example, those bizarre statements or positions from the scholars, and all of them have something or the other that's going to be considered shadh. And bizarre doesn't necessarily mean that it's something outrageous or something, crazy. But what it means is that it's going against what all the other scholars have of a position, and you have this one scholar on his own, and a lot of the times it may mean because he doesn't really even have anything of evidence for the claim that's being made. So he says that Abu Yusuf meaning the student of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhim, right? That he says that the water is najis. So neither of the three positions, he's saying that it's najis, in the same way that urine is najis and so on. سبب الخلاف في هذا أيضا ما يظن من أنه لا يتناوله اسم الماء المطلق. He tells us now the reason for why they're differing in this. It's the same reason for why they differed in the previous topic. He says it's because the scholars are differing with each other as to whether or not you can still call this water. It's clear, it's perfectly fine water. Now I go ahead and I make wudu with it. What do you call it? Is it still water or is it something else? So we're looking at it here to understand that it's actually from the aspect of urf. It is really going back to the perceptions of the people based on their custom and habits, whether or not water like that would be considered to be called water such that it would be used for purification or not. So he gives us some detail. He says, حتى إن بعضهم غلا في ظن اسم الغسالة أحق به من اسم الماء. And so Ibn Rushd rahmatullah alayhi, he goes to give his verdict in a position saying that, or opinion if I could rather say, he says that some of the scholars that they've exaggerated the position that they've held in the aspect of what they've called this, such that they want to call it bath water, instead of it just being water. So it's almost as though now you have, water that's been used already for wudu or something, that's now bath water. It's not water, it's bath water. In the same way that there may be, I don't know, I was going to say like Zemzem water, but Zemzem water is really, nobody has a problem with that. Of course, you make wudu with it, you drink it, and so on. But he's looking at it from the position of saying that, they're saying that to call it ma'ul ghusala, that this is more deserved, it's more correct, and it's better than just calling it water. Why? Because they want to differentiate between it being used and not used. He goes on to say, وقد ثبت أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان أصحابه يقتتلون على فضل وضوئه صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says that we have clear sunnah, and it is in Al-Bukhari, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he made wudu, that the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim, in their competition to get and use the water that was falling from the Prophet ﷺ as he was making wudu, the word and verbiage says yaqtatilun. It's as though they would fight each other. So it wasn't like these gentle, here take turns. It was like they're all underneath, they're trying to get it, and and naturally for him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was for the tabarruk of being able to have that water and seek blessings for the water that touched the body of the blessed Prophet alaihi salatu wasalam. And clearly, if the water was in and of itself something that was considered impure, the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't have allowed them to do that. Right? So this is the logic that's being followed. Because the Prophet ﷺ is obligated to make clear religious teachings. And in that he was a human being in the same way that everyone else was. Even though he was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no doubt about it, but he was still human. So the rules would have to apply to everyone in the same, unless there was going to be something specifically being told that I'm special or that I'm different. And we didn't have anything from him saying that I'm special and I'm different when it comes to the water that left over, that's been used by me for wudu. So Ibn Rushd rahmatullahi alayhi is saying that if the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim used to use that water and there was nothing of a religious problem with it, he's then saying, ولا بد أن يقع من الماء المستعمل في الإناء الذي بقي فيه الفضل. He's saying, and we know that the water that is used, it's going to have to also fall back into the actual container that the original water is being taken from to purify oneself. So it's not just the water that's falling, but even the original water, it would then be a problem because they would share the same water that was still left over, one after the other after the other. He says, وَبِالْجُمْلَةِ فَهُوَ مَاءٌ مُطْلَقٌ. So this is where Ibn Rushd rahmatullahi alayhi, he gives his verdict. He says, basically, this is pure water. Ma'un mutlaq, meaning that this, you can only call it water. You can't really call it anything else, even though it's been used. It's pure water. And لأنه في الأغلب ليس ينتهي إلا أن يتغير أحد أوصافه بدنس الأعضاء التي تغسل به. He says, because the majority of what we can recognize from this is that there's nothing of the characteristics of the water that change because of anything of impurities that are going to be there from the body part of the person as they are using it. And he then says, فإن انتهى إلى ذلك فحكمه حكم الماء الذي تغير أحد أوصافه بشيء طاهر. He says, and if anything does change with regards to the water, maybe a little something of its color, something of its taste, something of its smell, he goes, it's only changing because of something pure that is from the usage of the people themselves, nothing impure. So it's still good, it's still clean, it's still fine, because it's got something that is clean and pure, not impure in the way that it would have changed anything. وإن كان هذا تعافه النفوس أكثر وهذا لحظ من كره. He says, and he's calling attention to something now that is where we're looking at it from. He says, and if it be that people are grossed out by this, and this is what the majority of the situation is probably going to be at, that a person's going to feel gross watching somebody clean out their nose and rinse out their mouth and perhaps see something floating within the water, and then to go ahead and use it. Now here's where common sense also has to play a role, right? That if you're going to take that water from there and you're going to use it, let's say we're all going camping or we're all going hiking and we have something of a bowl that we open up or some type of a, if we're going to share it and we're all going to make wudu from that gallon, we're not going to take the water and blow our nose back right into the actual thing itself. This is where you're going to turn to the side on the ground someplace. Same thing with the rinsing of the mouth. But that which is going to be of washing your face and your arms, I mean, what's really going to be there? If anything, there might be very little of perhaps maybe some perspiration, some sweat, or who knows what. But that in and of itself is pure. There's nothing of a problem with that. And it's not like you're going to see boogers, for example, floating around in the water that you're going to get grossed out. It's still going to be crystal clear. Maybe it's going to be just a little bit less clear, but otherwise it's in and of itself fine. He goes, this is where the bigger problem is that people are going to become grossed out by something like this, seeing that others have used it. And this is why the position is being held by those who say that, for example, it is makruh, that it is disliked, because it's something that's going to gross people out. وَأَمَّا مَنْ زَعَمَ أَنَّهُ نَجِسٌ فَلَا دَلِيلَ مَعَهُ. He goes, as for the person who says, or the position that says that it is najis, that it is an impurity, he says they have no evidence for that statement, for that claim, and Allah knows best. And with that, alhamdulillah, we's be done. Any questions? Al-musta'mal, it would be in this case for both. They could be used for both ghusl and for wudu. So how and why Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah held that position, Allah knows best. But it may be in the way of what you're saying, that this will tie us back to the previous issue of if there's going to be a small quantity of an impurity, is it going to affect the pure water? So if and when we're looking at this as also being used for wudu and ghusl, that a person maybe what there might be on their hand or what there may be, for example, on their body, that from that aspect. But looking back at the positions that were from the previous topic, and we know that there was difference of opinion, well, what is a lot of water, what is a little bit of water, what's a little bit of an impurity as opposed to so on. So it may be that he's coming at it from that point. But then again, when we look at the hadith of where the Prophet ﷺ and Aisha and his wives Maymun and others of them would make their ghusl from the same pot, from the same bowl, from that same vessel, it would have to be said that once they've gone ahead and started one of them, then it would have to become impure for the other, right? But even with that, nobody said that. The Prophet ﷺ and his wives, and when I say wives, just so that nobody has the wrong impression, it wasn't that more than one of them were there at the same time, but as he would, for example, in the way that we may look at it today, that some of us, not necessarily myself, but some Muslims, mashallah, where they have these nice houses and in them they have these big jacuzzi type bathtubs. So mashallah, they may be able to get in the bathtub with their wife, right? And in the process, maybe they decide to take a ghusl from the water that's in there. Perfectly fine. Somebody may say, yeah, but your genitals have touched the water and who knows, there may be a little bit of urine or something. All of that is negligible and Allah knows best. Anyone else? Going once?
I do have another question. You mentioned Shad. Shad is something that, like you said, a scholar says that is completely, he's alone in it, like in this case, Abu Yusuf, right? He's against all the other scholars, and it's far out there. How is that in comparison to like in Hadith, like a Shad Hadith?
Yeah, so the Shad terminology for Hadith is different. Yeah, so shadh is in the hadith terminology, mukhalafati thiqatin man huwa awthaqa minhu, to the best of my recollection of the definition. So you have someone who is going to declare, who in and of himself is there's no faults or problems with him, but he's going against the person who is far more credible than himself
In the narration.
in what there's going to be of the narration, yeah. So that would make it, for example, shadh, because what he is narrating is contradicting someone who is more credible than him in what they're narrating. So, for example, if you have Shpendim and he is thiqah, and I'm saying that the flowers were yellow, and let's say that, Uthman is thiqah, but he's known to be even stronger, and he says that the flowers were actually white. My narration would be considered shadh because I'm actually contradicting, going against the person who is stronger, who is more credible in their strength of narration, even though I am.
So when they look at the hadith, would yours be rejected?
It would be rejected. It would said that hadithun shadh, yeah. Yeah. Not supposed to. Yeah. وإياك. And you'll find that, subhanAllah, with regards to the scholars, and this is, and I'll conclude with this, the differences within which sometimes we may find scholars being alone in a statement that they may hold, it's not something that should cause us to critique them in any disrespectful way. Rather, it's something that should further cause us to appreciate them in two ways. One is that it's proof from Allah Rabbul Alameen that only the Prophet ﷺ, with regards to the religion, that he was the only one that was ma'soom, that was infallible, that was going to be perfect and not have any mistakes. Right? And that's telling us then that every other human being, regardless of how great the scholar is, none of them are going to be infallible, perfect. They're all going to have something of a mistake or the other. The second is to help us appreciate from them that they were folks who, when they believed something, that's where they reached the conclusion in, that they stated that position, they held it, they mentioned it. And it wasn't that they necessarily gave in to, let's say, peer pressure or to blind following or something. Now you have all of that sort of stuff, but in these particular cases. And so that's to tell you, subhanAllah, that there's a level of integrity with the scholar, that he's holding true to what he has of knowledge and what he feels. Whether it's correct or not, it's a different story. And this is where that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is so beautiful. إِذَا اجْتَهَدَ الْحَاكِمُ وَإِذَا اجْتَهَدَ الْمُجْتَهِدُ فَأَصَابَ فَلَهُ أَجْرًا. That when the qualified person is going to exert their mental prowess at a particular topic, and the conclusion happens to be right, that they get a double reward. وَإِذَا اجْتَهَدَ فَأَخْطَأَ فَلَهُ أَجْرٌ وَاحِدٌ. But if they do that, and they're wrong in their conclusion, that they still get a reward. And they get two rewards in the first case because of the effort that they put into studying, analyzing the topic at hand, and then the second reward, that they were actually correct in the conclusion that they came to. But in the case of the one who came to the wrong conclusion, they're still rewarded and blessed for what they put into it, even though they were wrong with regards to the outcome or the result. And so this is part of the beauty that we have in our deen, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal that He be pleased with the scholars of the Ummah as a whole. We ask Him Jalla wa Ala that whenever any one of our great scholars passes away, that He Jalla wa Ala place at least 2 or 3 to fill their shoes. We ask Him Jalla wa Ala to never leave the Ummah without those scholars that truly love Him and fear Him and have the most comprehensive understanding of what this deen is about, and that are going to be the most sincere in teaching it to the Ummah as a whole. We ask Him Jalla wa Ala that He teach us all that is beneficial to us, and that He benefit us through all that He teaches us, and that He help that to be a source for us to be even more beloved to Him. Allahumma ameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Wa akhiru da'wana an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. You still have enough time to go home and watch the